Chairwoman, I think you're muted, but I want to make sure. Are you recognizing me?
I'm sorry. Let me
Okay.
start over. I now recognize the distinguished lady from Michigan 13, Congresswoman Tlaib.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chair Beatty, for holding this hearing on such an urgent and important topic for so many women in my community. I know research from the National Women's Law Center shows while women make up just under half of the workforce in the United States, they represent nearly 2/3 of the workforce in the 40 lowest paying jobs. Most of most of the working mothers are, most of them are working mothers and are primary breadwinners of their family. Their work has gone unseen and undervalued for so long, and they have been hit the hardest during this pandemic. And so, Ms. Regu, one of the things I want to know is what more can employers and policymakers like ourselves do to support women through the pandemic and ensure that existing compensation gaps for women of color specifically are not exacerbated by the effects of the pandemic?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. I think some of the policy solutions can meet some of the issues that have already been raised today. As you noted, women are overrepresented in minimum wage jobs and jobs that pay the tip minimum wage. One of the issues with these jobs is not only the low wage, but it is the fact that these jobs generally don't provide the important kinds of supports that allow women of color who are in these jobs to be both the breadwinner and the caregiver. And by that I mean that these jobs generally don't provide access to paid sick days, to paid family and medical leave. Many of these jobs, particularly now, must be performed in person and cannot be performed remotely. Workers in those jobs often find it difficult to access affordable child and family care. These jobs often don't have stable schedules, which can wreak havoc with caregiving arrangements. And so workers with caregiving responsibilities in these jobs are often placed in this very difficult position of choosing between caring for a loved one or going to work. And that's why you saw so many women, and particularly women of color, either cut back on their hours or leave the workforce altogether this year. So if we are going to think about things that employers can do, I think it's extremely helpful to not only think about people who are in professional settings or white collar jobs, but to center our policy responses on the people and the women of color and people with disabilities in these jobs that have the fewest supports and are paying the lowest wages. And as someone else has said today, the rising tide is going to lift all boats, and that includes women of color who are supporting families.
I agree. I've seen firsthand, director of so many women that with education, even hard work alone has not been enough to climb above the poverty line. And I know a lot of that is directly related to the cost of raising a child in our country. And it's among the highest in the nation. And that's before you take into account the impact it has on women's wages and gender pay gap. Some women take less demanding, less lucrative jobs just so that they are able to raise their families. Others face explicit discrimination. I know personally I have, of being a mother in the workplace, receiving fewer responsibilities under the assumption that they'll have babies and take time off. Even asked in an interview whether or not I plan to be pregnant, which is illegal. But even among all of that, we continue again to see us not addressing the cost of having a family. I want to open this up to all of the witnesses here. During the depths of the last year's economic crisis, we found that women's participation in the workforce fell to levels not seen since the 1980s. And has rebounded slower than what we've seen among our men. And even now, nearly 1.5 million mothers are still missing from the workplace. So again, I want to open it up. What policy steps should Congress take to make sure women do not pay a price in the workplace for choosing to raise a family? That's for anybody in the panel.
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. I'll say we talk a lot about workplace flexibility, and I think that we've got to get employers to think about a framework for allowing flexibility in the workplace. And Congress can help by putting together a framework without mandate, allowing for innovation so that it works within that particular industry and that the owners and the employers and the employees can work together to meet the specific needs of that particular workplace. So some framework that is different, that can be used across the country by all industries and not subject to different state laws would be really helpful in trying to address this issue.
No, thank you. And before I yield, what's completely frustrating is the fact that we have to force companies to do these things. We have to force certain sectors to do these things. But that's why I appreciate being part of this important subcommittee. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to see if Congressman Timmons is on.
Madam Chairman, I don't think he was